I still remember the exact moment my stomach dropped, because it wasn't the laugh. It was the way everyone else reacted like this was normal. Monday, 9:07 a.m., our weekly all hands. Cameras on. The executive team in neat squares. The chat scrolling with the usual corporate noise. Great update. Love the momentum. I was sitting at my desk in the open plan area, shoulders squared, trying to look calm in front of people who'd been quietly watching me get squeezed for months. My manager, Derek, ran the meeting like he owned the oxygen in the room. He was the kind of guy who spoke in alignment and visibility, while making sure only his name ever showed up on wins. He was also the kind of guy who could humiliate you in public and still call it leadership. That morning, he pulled up a slide titled Process Gaps, Immediate Fixes. My name was on it, not under owner, not under contributor, under risk. He didn't even hesitate. He leaned forward like he was about to share a funny story. Look, he said, laughing into the mic, if you're going to miss details, at least miss them quietly. Don't make it a whole situation. Then he looked directly into the camera, because honestly, he shrugged, you're not the first one HR had to fix. A couple of people laughed. Not hard, just enough. That half laugh people give when they want to stay safe. When they're relieved, it isn't their name on the slide. I felt heat crawl up my neck, but I didn't show it. I didn't argue. I didn't do the thing Derek wanted. Panic, explain myself, make it messy. I forced a small smile and wrote one sentence in my notebook. He just admitted there's already a file. After the meeting, I didn't storm to HR. That would have looked emotional. It would have fed the story. Instead, I did what I always do when something feels off at work. I started reconstructing the timeline. Because HR had to fix you isn't something managers say unless one of two things is already happening. Someone is preparing a paper trail, or someone thinks they've already won. And Derek didn't laugh like a man testing a joke. He laughed like a man who'd been told he was protected. For context, I wasn't some underperformer skating by. I was a senior operations analyst at a mid-sized logistics company that acted like it was a Fortune 100. My job was simple on paper. Make sure our routing and vendor cost system didn't bleed money. In reality, it meant my work touched everything. Client SLAs, vendor contracts, invoicing, internal audits, which also meant one thing. If someone wanted to fix me through HR, it wasn't because I was useless. It was because I was inconvenient. Over the last 3 months, Derek had been pushing for a new vendor deal, one of those strategic partnerships that gets executives excited because it sounds important. The numbers didn't work. The fees were higher, the penalties were uglier, and the service record was worse. I'd said it in a meeting politely. I'm not comfortable signing off on this without revisiting the terms. Derek smiled at me like I'd said something adorable. Appreciate the caution, he replied, but you're getting stuck in details. We need momentum. After that, the tone shifted. Suddenly I wasn't thorough. I was difficult. Suddenly my questions weren't due diligence. They were negativity. And suddenly I started getting pulled into little side calls, always framed as friendly coaching. Just want to help you be more collaborative. Make sure your communication style is landing right. HR's really big on tone these days. The first time he mentioned HR, I brushed it off. The second time I noticed he always said it casually, like a warning wrapped in a joke. The third time, I started saving everything, not in a dramatic way, not screenshots sent to myself like a teenager, in a professional way. I kept a clean folder on my work drive, meeting notes, change requests, approvals, and anything involving the vendor deal. Because in corporate life, there's a rule no one says out loud. The person with the cleanest documentation isn't always right. They're just the one who survives. Right after the all hands, I waited an hour. Let the air settle. Let Derek move on to his next target. Then I sent one email, not to HR, to Derek. Subject, clarification, process gaps. Slide I wrote, Hi, Derek. I want to ensure I understand the concerns raised in today's all hands. Can you confirm which specific deliverables you believe were missed and which dates you're referencing? I'd like to align on expectations moving forward. Short, calm, non-accusatory, the kind of message that can't be called emotional, he replied 6 minutes later. One line. Let's discuss live. No need to create a paper trail. That was the moment I knew I wasn't paranoid. Because if this was truly about performance, a manager would love a paper trail. But if it was about building a narrative, then my email was dangerous. I didn't reply. I scheduled a 15-minute meeting with HR myself. Not a complaint, not an accusation, just a career development check-in, which is corporate code for I'm here, I'm calm, and I'm paying attention. When the HR calendar accepted it, I leaned back and exhaled for the first time all day. And that's when I noticed something else. My access to our vendor dashboard, one I'd had for 2 years, was suddenly pending reapproval. It didn't lock me out completely, just enough to slow me down, just enough to make me look like I was falling behind. That's how this stuff starts, not with a firing, with tiny deniable obstacles that make you stumble in public. I stared at the screen for a long second, then opened my notebook again and wrote the second sentence. They're not fixing me. They're removing me. And I didn't know it yet, but Derek had made a mistake in front of everyone. Because the moment he said HR had to fix you, he turned a private smear campaign into a public statement, which meant HR couldn't pretend it didn't exist. And if HR was already involved, then somewhere inside this company, there was a document with my name on it. I was going to find out what it said, even if I had to let Derek think he was winning while I collected every piece of proof he forgot to hide. The HR meeting was scheduled for Wednesday at 2 p.m. By Wednesday at 9:15 a.m., Derek was already trying to ruin my week. I walked in, coffee in hand, and my inbox was stacked with calendar invites that hadn't been there the night before. Quick sync, alignment, touch base, all of them from Derek. All of them set with 10-minute notice, like he wanted me to spend the day reacting instead of working. And sitting at the top was a message from him with no greeting. Need you to resend your vendor risk notes. Legal asked. Today. That was funny because legal hadn't asked me anything. Also, my vendor risk notes weren't a single document. They were a sequence. Spreadsheets, emails, meeting minutes, and cost impact models. If Derek wanted something rescindable, he wasn't looking for clarity. He was looking for something he could control. I didn't reply right away. I opened our internal ticketing system and pulled the audit trail on the vendor deal. Every approval, every comment, every timestamp. And there it was. 2 days after I raised concerns, Derek had opened a process improvement ticket about me. Not about the deal. Not about the numbers. About me. Title: Documentation Gaps. Ops Analyst. Owner: Derek Watchers, HR Business Partner, Megan. People Ops Coordinator, and someone I didn't recognize from compliance. I stared at that list longer than I should have, because you don't add compliance to a documentation gap ticket unless you're trying to frame something as a policy issue. My hands didn't shake. Not yet. I clicked the ticket. Inside, Derek had written 3 bullet points. Missed key details affecting vendor decision-making. Resistance to direction. Communication style escalating tension. No examples, no dates, no attachments. Just vague, weaponized phrases. The kind HR can work with because they can fill in the blanks later. I scrolled down and saw the first evidence Derek had attached. A screenshot of a Slack message I'd sent in a project channel. It was me, asking a simple question. Can we confirm the penalty terms are capped? The draft I'm seeing looks open-ended. That was it, but Derek had highlighted the word penalty like I'd threatened someone. Then he'd added a comment beneath it. Example of alarmist tone in public channels. I leaned back in my chair and let the irritation hit me properly. Not rage. Not panic. That specific cold anger you get when you realize someone is documenting your personality instead of your work. I clicked View history. That's when I saw the part Derek didn't expect me to notice. He had edited the ticket at 11:48 p.m., the night before the all-hands, that late. And the next morning, my name was on a slide. So while the company slept, my manager was building a case. I opened my notebook and wrote, timeline, ticket created, midnight edits, public humiliation, access restricted. Then I did the one thing I knew would matter later. I started collecting neutral proof, not Derek is evil proof, objective proof. I pulled the version history of the vendor cost model, the one I'd built, and exported it. It showed every time I updated it and what changed. It also showed that the model had been downloaded multiple times by Derek in the last 2 weeks. I exported the internal routing data that proved the new vendor's on-time rate was worse than our current one. I grabbed the email thread where Derek wrote, in plain English, let's move forward. We can address terms later. You know what you call address terms later in contract work? A lawsuit. Then at 10:03 a.m., I got another message from Derek. Why aren't you responding? We need to align. Still no greeting, still no please, just pressure. I replied with 2 sentences. Happy to help. Can you specify which version of the notes legal requested and the deadline they gave you? I want to make sure we're responding accurately. He didn't answer the question. Instead, he called me. I let it ring. He called again. I let it ring. Then he sent, pick up. That's when my phone buzzed with a calendar invite that made my jaw tighten. Performance reset, mandatory. Attendees, me, Derek, HR, Megan. Time, 11 a.m. Location, conference room, B+. Zoom, so now he wasn't just building the narrative. He was speeding it up. I didn't know it yet. But that decision would cost him everything. I showed up at 10:59, calm, carrying a notebook and nothing else. No laptop, no panic, no defensive energy. Derek was already there, sitting like he owned the room. Megan from HR joined on Zoom from her office, face neutral, camera perfectly framed. Megan started with the tone HR always uses when they want to sound gentle while preparing to hurt you. Thanks for meeting. This is just an alignment conversation. Derek jumped in immediately. Yeah, he said, smiling. We just want to help you. There have been concerns. Then he slid a printed sheet across the table. It was the same 3 bullet points from the ticket. No examples. No dates. Just labels. Megan asked, do you understand what Derek is referring to? I looked at the paper, then I looked at Derek, and I said the first thing I'd practiced saying calmly in my head, all morning. I understand you've written concerns down, I said, but I don't understand what they're based on. Can we go line by line with specific instances and dates? Derek's smile tightened. We don't need to get into... We do, I said, still calm, because if this is going into a performance record, it needs to be accurate. Megan's eyes flicked slightly. Not dramatic. Just a micro movement that told me something important. She hadn't been expecting me to ask for specifics. Derek tried again. This isn't about one incident. It's a pattern. A pattern should be easy to demonstrate, I said. So yes, line by line. For a second, the room went quiet. Then Derek did something that felt small in the moment. But later, I'd replay it like a warning. He laughed. Not a full laugh, just the same little laugh he'd used in all hands. See? He said, glancing toward the camera. This is what I mean. It's always a debate. I didn't react. I didn't interrupt him. I just turned slightly toward the Zoom screen and addressed Megan directly. I want to cooperate, I said, but I also want to understand why my access was changed yesterday. I'm now pending reapproval for a dashboard I've used for 2 years. Who requested that? Derek's eyes moved, fast. Megan hesitated just half a second, and that hesitation was my confirmation. Because if HR didn't request it, then someone did. And if someone did it right before a performance reset meeting, it wasn't about performance, it was about leverage. Megan cleared her throat. I can look into the access change, she said. Derek leaned back, annoyed. It's standard. We're just tightening controls. On me, I said. He waved it off. It's not personal. That's when Megan said something that at the time sounded like a generic HR phrase. But I heard the warning underneath. Let's keep this constructive, she said, and let's make sure we're all aligned on expectations moving forward. Expectations. That word. That's how they start the paperwork. Megan asked me to summarize my understanding of my role, so I did, briefly, clearly, and in business language. Then Derek corrected me. He added responsibilities I'd never had, metrics I'd never been assigned, deadlines that didn't exist. He was rewriting my job live in front of HR, so I'd fail it later. And Megan was listening. I watched her face, still neutral, still professional, but her pen was moving. When the meeting ended, Megan said she'd send a recap. Derek stood up and smiled again, like we'd just had a productive talk. See? He said. This is how you improve. I left the room and walked back to my desk without changing my pace. Then I opened my calendar and saw something I hadn't noticed before. The HR meeting I'd scheduled for 2 p.m., it had been quietly deleted. No cancellation notice, no explanation. Just gone. And then silence, the kind that means something's gone wrong. That was when I stopped thinking of this as a rough week and started treating it like an operation, because if HR was deleting my meetings, then HR wasn't neutral, and I was officially on the clock. The first thing I did after I saw my HR meeting disappear was open my deleted items, because meetings don't just vanish. In a corporate calendar system, every cancellation leaves a fingerprint, an update, a timestamp, someone pressing a button, and there it was, buried under automated notifications and vendor pings. A cancellation from Megan, no explanation, no reschedule, just meeting canceled. I stared at it for a full 10 seconds, like my brain needed time to accept something simple. HR wasn't busy. HR was managing contact. That's when I stopped thinking like an employee trying to clear his name and started thinking like someone who needed to control the record. I opened a fresh document and titled it Timeline. No emotion, just facts. Monday, 9:07 a.m., public comment in all hands. HR had to fix you. Monday, 11:48 p.m., ticket edited with my name labeled as risk. Tuesday, my dashboard access moved to pending reapproval. Wednesday, 11 a.m., performance reset with HR present. Wednesday, 2 p.m., my HR check-in canceled by HR without rescheduling. Then I saved it in a neutral folder with a boring name, Ops Notes, because the only way to win these situations is to stay calm, long enough to make everything look obvious later. At 3:17 p.m., Megan sent the recap email she promised. Subject, follow-up, alignment conversation. It was written in HR language, smooth, vague, and dangerous. It said Derek had expressed concerns about my responsiveness, my tone in cross-functional channels, and my ability to accept direction. It also contained one line that made my chest tighten. Next steps. Derek will outline expectations and provide support. Continued misalignment may lead to formal corrective action. Formal corrective action. The polite phrase for, we're building a ramp to remove you. And in the recap, Megan included something that never happened. She wrote, employee acknowledged the feedback and agreed to adjust communication style. That sentence was a trap, because later, when Derek escalated, they'd point to this email and say, he agreed, he was coached, he failed to improve. I didn't fire back, I didn't write an essay. I did the only thing that matters in corporate disputes. I corrected the record while staying calm enough to look reasonable. I replied within 5 minutes. Thanks, Megan. For accuracy, I want to clarify 2 points for the record. I requested specific examples and dates supporting the concerns, so I can address them concretely. Those were not provided during the meeting. I did not agree that my communication style is inappropriate. I asked for a consistent standard and examples. I'm happy to align once those are shared. Also, can you confirm who requested the change to my vendor dashboard access and the business reason, since it impacts my role deliverables? Short, neutral, surgical. Then I BCC'd my work email to a private folder, not forwarding outside, not doing anything that could violate policy, just organizing internally, keeping everything. For the first time all week, I felt something close to relief, because if they were going to frame me, I wasn't going to let them do it without friction. But that was just the beginning. At 4:02 p.m., Derek messaged me. "Why are you escalating to HR? This is exactly the behavior we discussed." I stared at the message and actually laughed, quietly, to myself, because he'd just proven what this was. Not performance, not alignment, control. I replied, "Not escalating, documenting expectations as advised. Happy to align once you provide specific examples and dates." He didn't answer. Instead, at 4:18 p.m., my access request updated again. It moved from pending reapproval to denied. No reason, no ticket link, just denied. And suddenly my work for the week, my actual assigned responsibilities, became impossible to complete on time. That's how you manufacture performance issues. You take away the tools, then blame the person for not delivering. I took a screenshot and saved it in my neutral folder. Then I opened the Access Management portal and clicked Details. And there it was. Approver, Derek M. My throat tightened, not with fear, with clarity. He hadn't tightened controls. He'd personally blocked my ability to do my job. I didn't know it yet, but that decision would cost them everything. Because Derek had just created a direct timestamp link between his concerns and an action that sabotaged my deliverables. So I did what any competent employee does when access gets denied. I opened an IT access ticket. I didn't write, "My manager is sabotaging me." I wrote, "Access to vendor dashboard was denied. This access is required for daily responsibilities tied to client SLA reporting and cost reconciliation. Please advise appropriate approver and provide an escalation path, as deadlines are time-sensitive." Then I attached the denial screenshot, and, this part mattered, I added one line at the bottom. Please note, this access was active for 2 years without incident. I hit submit. 10 minutes later, an automated response came back with a routing tag. Assigned, governance, risk, and compliance. Access review. I blinked. Compliance. The same mystery watcher on Derek's documentation gaps ticket. So it wasn't random. Something about this vendor, or this dashboard, was already under a control framework. Access wasn't just IT, it was risk managed, which meant Derek had dragged compliance into this, either because he was scared of them, or because he thought he could use them. I leaned back and exhaled slowly through my nose. Then I opened the vendor deal folder and reviewed the contract draft again, this time not like an analyst, but like someone looking for motive. Penalty terms, ugly. Service credits, vague. Termination clauses tilted in the vendor's favor, and one line that I'd flagged weeks earlier, a consulting services addendum that didn't match any operational need, a second invoice stream, a place money could move without looking like routing fees. I felt my stomach drop again. Different this time. Not humiliation. Realization. If Derek was forcing this vendor through and silencing objections, it wasn't because he liked momentum. It was because the deal was good for someone, and it wasn't the company. That night, I didn't sleep much. I didn't spiral. I didn't drink. I didn't doom scroll. I built a clean package. 1-page summary. Deal risks, objective metrics, where my objections were documented and where Derek overrode them. Supporting attachments. Internal cost model versions. Email thread with address terms later, and the access denial showing Derek blocking my tools. Right after HR documentation started. I didn't add opinions. I didn't accuse anyone of corruption. I just made it easy for a third party to understand what was happening without needing to believe me. Then I did one more thing, quiet, boring, and completely within policy. I submitted a report through the company's ethics portal. Not dramatic. Not anonymous revenge. A compliance-style note. Concern regarding vendor selection process. Repeated overrides of documented risk flags. Restricted system access preventing accurate analysis. Potential policy exposure due to penal terms and addendum structure. Requesting review of approvals and access changes associated with vendor dashboard. No names, no emotional language, just enough for compliance to pull the thread. Because the truth about corporate downfalls is simple. People don't fall because you scream. They fall because a system notices patterns and can't ignore them. And for the first time since Derek laughed at me in front of everyone, I felt something shift inside my chest. That night, I stopped being the guy trying to prove he wasn't the problem. I became the guy making sure the right people saw the real one. By the time I closed my laptop, I already knew how this would end. Not with me winning an argument, with Derek trying to push one last thing through. Too fast, too loud, while compliance quietly pulled the approvals behind him. And when that happened, he wouldn't have a joke to hide behind, he'd have paperwork. By Thursday morning, I had a case number from the ethics portal, and a quiet little sentence at the bottom that felt like a switch getting flipped. Your report has been routed to governance, risk, and compliance. No drama, no fireworks, just an acknowledgement that someone outside Derek's orbit now had eyes on the same facts I did. At 9:26 a.m., my IT ticket updated. Status, escalated access review, GRC, comment. Access denial appears inconsistent with role-based controls. Please join a review call. 5 minutes later, I got a calendar invite from someone I'd never met. Alicia Moreno. Governance, risk, and compliance subject. Access plus vendor process review. 15 men. I looked her up in the directory. Senior manager, not IT, not HR. The kind of person who didn't care about Derek's charisma or Megan's phrasing. I accepted. At 10 a.m., I joined the call. Alicia was on with another guy named Mark from procurement controls. Both of them were calm in a way that told me they'd seen this pattern before. Alicia started simple. We received an ethics intake related to vendor selection process and system access changes. She said, "We're not asking you to speculate. We're asking you to confirm facts. Can you walk us through what access you lost and when?" So I did. Dates, screenshots, denial showing Derek as approver, the 2-year history of the access being normal. Mark asked one question that landed heavier than it sounded. Is your analysis required for the vendor approval packet? Yes, I said. It feeds the SLA risk section and cost impact. Alicia paused for half a beat. And your access was denied after the HR meeting? Yes, that was all she needed. Okay, she said. Do not attempt to regain access through informal channels. We'll handle the control path. Also, please keep all project files intact. You may receive a legal hold notice. I didn't ask her what that meant. I already knew. Legal hold means someone's about to get investigated, and the company wants its evidence preserved. When the call ended, I sat there for a second staring at my screen, because for the first time all week, I wasn't alone inside Derek's story. They thought I was gone. I wasn't. At 11:13 a.m., Derek appeared at my desk. Not Slack, not email, in person. He leaned on the edge of my cubicle like we were friends, like he was doing me a favor by lowering his voice. "Hey," he said, smiling too hard. "We need to talk." I kept my tone neutral. "Sure. What's up?" He looked around, then dipped closer. "I'm hearing noise," he said. "Compliance noise. Procurement noise. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" He didn't say it like a question. He said it like a warning, wrapped in a joke. I didn't blink. I submitted an access ticket after my role critical system was denied. That's normal. His smile twitched. "Right," he said. "Normal? But now it's getting escalated, and you know how that looks." "It looks like I need the tools to do my job," I said. His eyes narrowed. "Don't do this. Don't turn it into a thing." That was his move, make reality sound like drama. I stayed seated, calm, professional. I'm not turning anything into anything, I said. My work depends on that access. Derek straightened up, the friendly posture dropping for half a second. Listen, he said, quieter now. We can solve this internally. You don't want to create a reputation. There it was. The real threat. The one people don't write down. I looked up at him. My reputation is the reason I'm still calm, I said, because I can explain every decision I've made. He held my gaze, then nodded like he'd decided something. Okay, he said. Then we'll formalize it. He walked away. At 11:47 a.m., the meeting invite arrived. Performance Improvement Plan Kickoff. Attendees: me, Derek, Megan, HR. Time: 1 p.m. I didn't feel fear. I felt almost appreciation, because he'd just done exactly what I needed him to do. He escalated in writing, right after compliance got involved. At 12:22 p.m., procurement sent a message in the vendor project channel. Public. Temporary hold placed on vendor X, approval pending control review. No names, no drama, just a hold. I watched the channel go silent the way a room goes silent when someone important enters. Then Derek posted, Understood. We'll circle back. Short, controlled, like he still had control. But at 12:31 p.m., the vendor rep emailed Derek, the project group, and accidentally me. Do we still have executive sign-off today? We have resources staged. Staged. That word mattered, because it meant Derek had promised them something before the process was complete. At 12:34 p.m., Derek called me again. I let it ring twice, then answered on speaker, still typing. What's up, Derek? His voice was tight now. No humor. No coaching tone. Did you talk to procurement? No. Did you talk to compliance? I had an access review call after my ticket escalated, I said. That's not optional. He exhaled hard like he was trying not to snap. You're making this harder than it needs to be. I kept my voice flat. I didn't start this in an all hands. Dead silence on the line. Then he hung up. At 1 p.m., I joined the PIP kickoff. Megan was on camera, same neutral expression. Derek sat in a conference room this time, jaw set. He didn't look like a man who'd told a joke in public 3 days ago. Megan started with the script. This is a supportive process, she said. We want to help you succeed. Then Derek shared his screen. It was a PIP document already filled out. Not a draft, not a discussion. Filled out. He had goals listed that depended on the dashboard access he had denied me. He had deadlines for reports I couldn't generate without the system. He had a section titled Behavioral Expectations that was basically Don't Question Me. He was trying to trap me into failing a plan built on missing tools. Megan asked, Any questions before we proceed? I didn't argue. I didn't protest. I didn't say this is unfair. I asked one question. Can we confirm on the record whether my access to the vendor dashboard will be restored so I can meet the deliverables listed in this plan? Derek answered too quickly. It's not required, he said. Megan looked at him. I let that hang for a second, then I calmly shared my screen. I pulled up the role description in our internal HR system. Then the process doc for SLA reporting. Then the access denial screenshot. I can't complete the deliverables without that system, I said, and the denial shows you as the approver. Derek's face tightened. That's... Megan cut in, voice still polite but firmer now. Derek, she said, if the deliverables require access, we need to resolve access first. He opened his mouth, then closed it, and that's when a new email landed in my inbox mid-meeting. Subject, Legal Hold Notice, Preservation of Records. Sender, Legal Operations. I didn't react outwardly, I just read the first line. You are instructed to preserve all documents and communications related to vendor X selection, access changes, and performance documentation. It named the exact 3 areas Derek had been using to corner me. Vendor, access, HR paperwork. Megan stopped talking. Her eyes flicked to her own email. You could tell she'd received the same notice. Derek's face changed, not dramatic, just drained, like someone had unplugged his certainty. Megan cleared her throat. Okay, she said slowly. Given the legal hold, we're going to pause this process pending guidance. Derek snapped. Why would we? Megan cut him off again, this time not asking. Because legal is now involved, she said, and we follow procedure. For the first time, Derek looked like a manager who wasn't in charge of the room. The meeting ended abruptly. No next steps. No supportive tone. Just a hard stop. 2 minutes later, another invite appeared on my calendar. Control review. Leadership required. Attendees included Alicia, GRC, Mark, Procurement Controls, Megan, HR, Derek, and the VP of Operations. And then silence. The kind that means something's gone wrong. Because Derek had spent months building a story about my tone. But now the company wasn't looking at my tone. They were looking at his approvals, his edits, his access denials, his midnight paperwork. And the next meeting wasn't about fixing me. It was about explaining him. The control review was scheduled for Friday at 9 a.m. I slept maybe 4 hours that night, but not because I was scared. Because my brain wouldn't stop replaying the same simple thought. He did all of this because he believed nobody would check. At 8:57, I joined the call. Camera on, neutral background. Notebook open. Alicia from GRC was already there, calm and direct. Mark from Procurement Controls. Megan from HR. The VP of Operations, Sharon, joined a minute later, one of those executives who speaks rarely but remembers everything. Derek showed up last, camera off at first, then on. And for the first time all week, he didn't look amused. Alicia started with the same line she'd used with me. We're here to confirm facts, she said. This isn't about personalities. It's about process integrity. Then she shared her screen, a timeline, not mine, theirs. GRC had pulled system logs. They had the vendor approval packet versions, the access control history, the ticket edits, the Slack exports. Alicia pointed to one column on the timeline. Here are the access changes for vendor dashboard, she said. 2 years of stable access under role-based controls. Then a denial was submitted and approved within a 24-hour window. She clicked the entry. Approver? Derek M. Then she clicked the next entry. A reapproval request. Created, denied, then rerouted. Within minutes of my IT ticket escalating, she looked at Derek. Can you explain the business rationale for denying access needed for SLA and cost risk reporting during an active vendor selection? Derek cleared his throat. It's not strictly needed, he said. We have other sources. Mark from Procurement Controls leaned in. Which sources? He asked. Derek hesitated because there weren't any. So he pivoted, like he always did. This is actually part of a broader performance issue, he said. We were working with HR to address communication and... Alicia cut him off without raising her voice. We're not discussing performance, she said. We're discussing controls. Performance documentation becomes relevant only if it was used to justify access and process deviations. Then Sharon, the VP, spoke for the first time. Derek, she said, did you deny his access because he questioned the vendor? The question was simple, almost gentle, but there's no gentle way to answer it if the truth is yes. Derek tried to laugh, habit. It didn't land. No, he said quickly, of course not. Alicia clicked again. New screen, an internal ticket Derek created. Documentation gaps. Ops analyst. Edited at 11:48 p.m. before the all-hands. Watchers included HR and compliance. Alicia highlighted a line from Derek's notes. Employee is resistant to direction. Raises concerns that slow momentum. Then she highlighted the next timestamp. The all-hands where Derek said publicly, You're not the first one HR had to fix. And then the access denial immediately after the HR recap email. It wasn't a story anymore. It was a pattern in a straight line. Mark asked the next question. Why was compliance added as a watcher to a performance-related ticket? Derek swallowed. Compliance is... sometimes copied for vendor control matters, Mark finished calmly. Not for coaching conversations. Megan's face had changed. She wasn't neutral anymore. She looked careful. Alicia turned to her. Megan, did HR approve or request the removal of the employee's independent check-in meeting? Megan blinked, then answered slowly. I canceled it because Derek told me it would be redundant. We had already met. Sharon didn't raise her voice. But he was the subject of the concern, she said. Megan went quiet. Alicia didn't need to press. The silence said enough. Then Alicia moved to the vendor itself. She shared a document labeled Addendum Consulting Services. The one line I'd flagged. Mark explained in a clipped procurement tone what it meant. It creates a secondary invoice stream outside standard routing fees. It also bypasses the normal rate card review. Sharon asked, Who requested that addendum? Alicia clicked. It was sent from Derek to the vendor rep with his signature block, 2 weeks earlier. And there in the email chain was a sentence Derek had written late at night. Need this structured so it doesn't slow approval. No jokes, no coaching, just intent. Derek's mouth opened slightly, then closed. He looked at the screen like he was seeing his own handwriting for the first time. Alicia said, We are placing an immediate hold on vendor X. Procurement will reopen the selection. Any off-cycle communications with the vendor must stop. Then Sharon spoke again. And Derek, she said, you're stepping away from this program effective now. That was it. No shouting, no grand verdict, just a sentence with weight. Derek tried to recover. Sharon, this is being blown up, he said. He's been difficult. He always challenges. Sharon held up her hand. The issue isn't that he challenged, she said. The issue is that you tried to remove the controls that allowed him to challenge. Then she looked at me. Do you have anything to add? I could have unloaded. I could have made it personal. I could have finally said what his laugh did to me in that room. I didn't. I kept it clean. Yes, I said. I want to do my job. I want a process I can defend. That's all I've been asking for. Alicia nodded. Understood, she said. Your access will be restored today. Also, you'll receive guidance from legal on what to preserve. Please do not discuss this outside required parties. The meeting ended at 9:41 a.m. No congratulations, no victory speech. Just facts being corrected. And for the first time in days, my chest felt quiet. Around noon, my vendor dashboard access came back without fanfare. At 1:18, I got an email from Megan. Subject: Apology plus next steps. She didn't fully admit wrongdoing, HR never does, but she wrote enough to tell me she'd been told to stop playing defense for Derek. At 3:06, Sharon called me directly. No HR on the line, no Derek, just her. I'm not going to ask you to relive it, she said, but I am going to ask you one thing. Can you lead the revised vendor evaluation? I paused, because that question was the real ending. Not revenge, not humiliation, restoration, a return to competence? Yes, I said, if the process is clean. It will be, she replied, and your name will be on it this time. After the call, I sat at my desk and looked around the office. Same walls, same chatter, same fluorescent lighting. But I felt different, because Derek had tried to make me small in public, and I'd learned something that lasts longer than any manager's laugh. If someone wants to fix you through HR, they're counting on you to either explode or disappear. So I didn't explode. I didn't disappear. I documented, I stayed calm, and I made the record impossible to ignore. And the funny part? Derek wasn't the first manager HR had to fix, but he was the first one I watched get fixed by his own paperwork. And when I finally shut down my laptop that evening, it wasn't anger I felt. It was peace. Because the story ended without loose threads. Vendor hold lifted the right way, process corrected, access restored, Derek removed from the program. And the next all hands? My name wasn't on a slide as risk. It was on the agenda as the person presenting the new controls. Quietly, properly, like it always should have been.